Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Roofing Contractor Walls and Ceilings Legal Insights Q&A. I'm RC editor Art Eisner, very happy to be joined as usual by Trent Cotney, one of the best legal minds in the business. Trent with Cotney Attorneys and Consultants. Welcome. I appreciate you being here, Trent.
Art, it's always a pleasure. I look forward to talking to you.
All right. Well, let's jump right in with the most concerning issue we keep hearing about from roofing contractors. Where are the supplies, Trent?
Yeah, that's a good question. The issue, and this is something that we deal with constantly now. For the last month, maybe even 6 weeks, it occupies the majority of my day. So when I'm not talking to you, I am on the phone. I am responding to emails. I got people hitting me up on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I got people asking me for materials. That's how bad it is when you're asking your lawyer if they've got any materials stored anywhere. So, what I have seen is that the shortage issue is very complex. It is not a single isolated issue. A lot of people say, well, it's COVID-19. It's like, not really. It had some impact, but it really what it comes down to is the raw material components that are needed for a lot of these manufacturers are not available. Okay, they're just not available. So if you're looking at some petroleum based products or resins or even there's a semiconductor shortage. There's all these different things that are needed in order to either increase production or to produce the final product, and you can't get them. Okay, so some of it is COVID-19. We're looking at how bad India is faced right now. We source a lot of our chemicals and stuff from India. So that obviously has a ripple effect, and it's preventing manufacturers from getting the source material they need to produce a lot of things. When you combine that with, some of the tariffs and trade wars, the Suez Canal blockage, the previous storms that we had, the inflationary pressures from the stimulus money that has gone around, and a whole host of other things, trucker shortage, it has created an absolute perfect storm. And I have spent the majority of my days either figuring out how to adjust contracts before they're executed or how to deal with the problem after you've got an executed contract. All very complex issues, and I don't think it's gonna disappear anytime soon.
Right. So you're still hearing a lot about that from contractors. Is it happening more on the residential side of the business or on the commercial side, or is it really both?
It's primarily commercial. It is, although there are shortages and, price increases on, shingles, obviously plywood, we've all seen what happened there, right? OSB, same. Some fasteners, plate shortages, things like that. But really commercial has been impacted the greatest from the shortages, just because a lot of the materials that they need depend on these raw materials that are just not available. So, it is, in my mind, it is, everyone wants to point the finger at somebody else, but it's really a systemic problem. It is not an isolated issue. It is something that is about as unforeseeable as we could get, in that I think it was impossible to really know the extent of the shortages that we would be seeing and how that would necessarily impact, everything that was going to happen after that. So, yeah, it is. It is. I can never think of another time in our industry's history where we have faced the same type of material shortage. Maybe sometime around the war, where they were having to repurpose rags and stuff that were normally used as felts for wartime purposes, maybe. But other than that, I think this is a brand new territory that we've entered into now. And almost every single contractor I've talked to has been affected in some manner.
Right. And there's no easy fix. Like you said, it's not like you can correct it with just doing one thing. Some contractors, though, we're hearing are trying to get ahead of the game. They're really concerned about what may happen peak season this summer and then into the fall. What are you seeing contractors do, and what is the danger of stocking up on materials this far in advance?
So I am seeing a little bit of speculation out there where, there's almost we all remember what happened to toilet paper at the beginning of COVID-19, right? Everyone was run into their local store to grab it. And I think there is some, hoarding and speculation going on. To a certain extent, there are some safe bets. Lumber prices, I think, will remain steady, although they've gone down. There has been some decrease in lumber, but that you're going to need that if you're a residential contractor going into the storm season, right? There are others that I think are a little bit more dangerous. And a couple of things that I would really recommend is, I have no problem pre-purchasing material if you have a signed contract and you've been given the go-ahead notice to proceed, or getting that payment from the owner or having the owner do a direct purchase and storing it. But what I am a little bit more concerned about, I guess, is, speculating, purchasing certain types of materials and exhausting your cash as a result. Cash is still king. It will always be king. And while I anticipate that materials will, we're going to continue to see this volatility, I think that I would recommend some caution and make sure that all the pre-purchase that are done based on, absolute, you're going to use it, you're just spending it now rather than, risking not having it later. Honestly, if I had a choice of investing in materials or something else, I'd probably do something else, just because you don't know necessarily what's going to happen or what materials are going to be affected. So go for the safe bet, I guess, would be my recommendation.
Okay. We touched on this a little bit in your latest column for us at roofingcontractor.com, covering the use of substitute materials during this shortage. You included some really key contract language in that piece. Why do contractors need to read it?
So, it is one of the things I'm tasked with, Art, is I'm tasked with trying to figure out how to negotiate a price increase or an extension of time on an existing contract. And, what I always like to do is I like to engage in a 4-step process in order to get that done. Okay. Step one is you set the stage. So one of the things that we've done is we've prepared a letter that kind of goes through all the different reasons that we are where we are. It says, look, this is a global issue. It was unforeseeable. This is why. And that sort of sets the stage. It creates the rhetoric that's kind of needed to get your customer off center. The second thing I like to do, Art, is I like to focus on the contract itself. So what I recommend is that every contractor listening to this, if they're going to, ask for additional money or additional time, go through your contract, review every single provision, and on a separate sheet of paper, write down a list of any possible provision that you think may assist you. So along those lines, the substitution provision is one that I think can definitely be useful. Okay. And I'll explain how. The third step is you submit your change or your claim by citing to those contract provisions and really advocating. Okay. Don't just push paper. You've got to advocate. And then the fourth, Art, is after you submit that change order, you pick up the phone and you say, look, I just want to give you a heads up. I know you're getting this change order, but why don't we figure out if there's a way we can meet in the middle? Or there's got to be some way that we can work on this to make sure that, your project stays on time. Maybe we can rephase it or we can do some things differently. That's when you really negotiate. So from a substitution standpoint, people should remember that those substitution provisions in your contracts allow you to potentially substitute, a material that is of similar quality. Okay. And oftentimes you need to get architect approval or you need to get owner approval. But a word of caution, okay, if you're substituting materials, be very careful about warranties. Because a lot of times if you are, if you've got an apples to apples system and suddenly you've got an apples and oranges, then one manufacturer may not want to warrant that, okay? So what I really recommend is make sure you get all the clearances that you need from the architects, from the owner, from anybody and everybody before you engage in that. Let me give you a real world example, Art. We had a residential contractor does a lot of work down in South Florida. They had a tile roof system spec'd. It required foam adhesive, okay? They could not find any foam adhesive. That is a huge shortage down in South Florida. So they went to the architect and said, hey, can we do a mechanically fastened? The owner said, no, I don't like the look of that. I don't want it for whatever reason. So what we ended up doing is we negotiated using the substitution provision. We negotiated an entirely different system. They went to metal, okay? But I used that as a contractual basis to get us there. Oftentimes what you're trying to do in a contract is just find a colorable argument that helps get you off center. And that's one of those provisions that could potentially do that.
Wow. So obviously a lot of good information there in that column. I did wonder, Trent, you obviously represent more than just roofing contractors. You cover the entire spectrum of the building envelope. How is the supply shortage in roofing impacting the rest of the construction industry, and what kind of ripple effect are we seeing?
Yeah, and this material shortages, it goes across all trades. There are certain components and pieces that are used in walls and ceilings or HVAC or, general contractors that they just don't have the capability of getting certain things that they need. So what we're seeing now is we're seeing, roofing is usually a critical path. It's part of that progress in a job that, that when you're setting up the schedule, that if you don't have it complete, you can't do other stuff. A great example is, let's say you've got new construction, you've got a building that you're building, right? You can't go on and start doing interior work until you make sure it's waterproof. And how do you do that? You got to get a roof on it. So it absolutely affects critical path. It is causing delays, and it has a ripple effect that impacts general contractors. We see this most readily in a lot of the projects that were accelerated because of COVID-19. The demand was astronomical. So there's a lot of projects that are moving quickly, but they've kind of slowed to a halt because the roofer can't do what they need to do. Okay. And it's not just the roofer. It's, like you said, everybody in the building envelope, there are certain pieces and components that can't get done. And this demand it's almost like an avalanche. It just increases, There's the backlog is going up and up and up and up. And it is, at some point, I anticipate it will alleviate, but clearly managing delays on a project. Please listen to this. If you're listening to this right now, whether it's via YouTube or the podcast, what I want you to do is really focus on your delay claims and make sure you are submitting a time extension for anything and everything. Doesn't matter whether it's a rain delay. It doesn't matter if you are even missed a couple of hours. Every single minute is precious because you are going to be facing all kinds of upstream delay claims, liquidated damages claims, stuff related to impact of schedule.
Wow, Trent, sounds like you're going to need a whole new division.
Yeah, we're hiring. So, anybody, send them my way.
All right. Turning to some other news, we've also posted at roofingcontractor.com. IRE 2021 in Las Vegas, registration is open. Hotels are selling out. Seems like a lot of positive momentum towards this show. You obviously attend every year and exhibit. What are you looking forward to? What are you hearing?
So yeah, I think, since the CDC's kind of opened up its mask policy and Vegas is now open, I think that it has changed a lot of people's opinions. I think it has gained a lot of momentum. I know that we've got a double booth there. We're really excited. Both our consulting team and our legal team is going to be there. We're speaking. So we're looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great opportunity. Mandalay is a great venue. It's real easy to have everything under one roof, so I don't have to worry about, no pun intended, I don't have to worry about walking out or anything else. I could stay right there from start to finish, get everything I need, and go right back up to the room. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great time of year, and I think we're going to have a good attendance.
All right. We also posted some news recently about the Trade Association Coalition in the roofing industry and the recent survey results. I know you're a data guy, anything stand out to you from there?
Yeah, so that was a very interesting article that you guys published. I encourage anybody that's listening to go check that out because there is some interesting statistics in there. And the thing that I'm most focused on is backlog. That shows me the health of the industry. From what I heard, I had a feeling, and the stuff that we had seen on our end, that backlog was increasing back to pre-COVID levels, and that's kind of what I'm seeing, is that demand is there. Very interesting, scenario we've got demand, but we just don't have material supply. So, what's going to happen? I don't know. I think this is going to be a great time. We're going to look back at this, Art, and I think this is going to spur on even more innovation. I really think anytime you've got such a big gap between supply and demand, that's when innovation and technology comes into play. So, very interesting. That was the stat that kind of stood out to me, that I think 20% or so of people said they had 5 months or or so backlog. And I was like, wow, that's great. So when I see those kinds of numbers, that's reassuring.
Let's hope they can hold on to those workers for that
Yeah.
long till those projects start going, right?
Right, right.
That's another piece of it. Trent, what else is on your mind?
Yeah, so some quick news tidbits that I figured I'd throw out to our listeners. Many of you might be wondering about OSHA's COVID emergency temporary standard, and there's been sort of an opinion now. Why do we need it? You know, CDC has done what they need to do. We're coming out of this, hopefully. You know, mass restrictions have gone down. Do we really need another, is there a grave danger that requires an ETS, an emergency temporary standard? And what's interesting is the U.S. Chamber has already said that it plans on challenging any emergency temporary standard to court. So that may ultimately die on the vine. The second thing I heard, Art, is they are now in the process of doing rulemaking. OSHA is doing rulemaking when it comes to HAZCOM. So the standards that are used to identify, hazardous chemicals, there is going to be some additional rulemaking based on that. They've started that process. So I expect to see more on that throughout the coming months. Last thing I'll mention to you, Art, is a lot of the energy efficiency tax incentives and stuff that came out on the building side. A lot of the construction groups were responded positively to that. But the concern is a lot of it is tied to prevailing wage and, these apprenticeship programs, again, tying it back to unions. So there there were some optimism there. There's some concern because a lot of these tax incentives require prevailing wage rate, require use of apprenticeship programs. So it's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out. Ultimately, a lot of this is still in the works, but again, some foreshadowing for things to come.
Okay, great insight, Trent, as always. I really appreciate it. And thank you to all of you joining us out there. Trent, where can people find out more?
Sure, then go to cotneycl.com or email me direct at tcotney@cotneycl.com.
Okay, and like I mentioned before, I would encourage you to check out Trent's latest contributions to roofingcontractor.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our new free e-magazine and our e-newsletters so you can stay on top of the latest news and information impacting the industry. For our walls and ceilings audience, please also visit wconline.com for comprehensive coverage of the interior construction industry. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.